This episode is proudly supported by Westholme Australian Wagyu. Whether you're a chef or just love going to restaurants, you know the best ingredients are everything, especially when it comes to beef. Westholme, based in Queensland and the Northern Territory, Australia, is working with the land to create nature-led Australian Wagyu. They steward 16 million acres of rangeland, guided by the natural ecosystem where cattle graze and forage on native grasses for the first few years of their lives. The result is high-quality Wagyu beef that reflects the terroir of Northern Australia. Westholme believe that when nature leads, flavour follows. Learn more at westholme.com.
We encourage our patients to find a quieter eatery and to be assertive and say, no, I have a hearing loss. I'm going to this place because it's where I can hear.
Hello, everybody. It is Dani Valent with you today for an episode of Dirty Linen. And as always, I am looking forward to being with you for a chat about the world of food, drink, and gathering around the table. This idea of gathering together is particularly important for this conversation because what do we do when we gather? We not only eat, we not only drink, but we also hopefully can have a good chat about ourselves and our lives, find community, perhaps sort out some problems, fix the state of the world, feel that sense of togetherness. That is particularly important for people who have challenges hearing, and that's what we're talking about today. We're chatting to audiologist Laura Drexler. She is the founder of Ambient Menu, the creator of the Quiet Restaurant Guide. Laura, welcome to Dirty Linen.
Hello, thank you so much for having me.
So good to have you here. I reckon, I always get asked about where people should dine out. We're going out, there's 6 of us, we want this, we want that, but we want to be able to talk. I reckon it's one of the most commonly considered criteria for dining out. People hate straining to hear. They want people of all different ages to be able to enjoy the experience, and they don't want to have a sore throat from shouting at the end of the meal. But at the same time, we do want lively experiences. I guess people want different things from their restaurants. Let's start back about your career. Tell us a little bit about what it is that you do and how you came to be interested in this particular issue.
So as an audiologist, I work with people that have hearing and balance issues. So in 2019, I was doing my Masters of Research project for the audiology, and we were talking about commensality, which is the act of dining together. There's so much research on how important commensality, being together, is for the mind, the body, the soul. But we also know that hearing loss can negatively affect that gathering. So we were looking at the interactions that hearing loss had on dining together. And we were specifically looking at family gatherings, meaning people at home, but all of the participants spoke about lively restaurants and how that was the one environment that really interfered with their ability to, engage around the table. So I thought to myself, well, surely there's a website, an app, something I can guide my future patients to that can help them navigate this situation and find something that suits their hearing needs. And there wasn't, so I created it myself in 2020.
I love that can-do attitude. It's fantastic. I mean, tell us about hearing issues or hearing loss. How many people does it impact? What happens at different stages of life? And why is it background noise and conversations that people have particular trouble with?
Yes, well, it's very common. It affects 1 in 6 people in Australia. It affects people of all ages. It is not just as you get more mature, people get hearing loss. It is more common as we get more mature. As we age, the auditory system does start to degrade, especially more in the higher frequencies. So we get what we call a sloping hearing loss, where you can hear the lower sounds quite well. That gives the perception of volume, but you're missing the higher frequency sounds, and that gives the perception of clarity. So like or the softer parts of speech. So if you have that particular type of sloping hearing loss that is more common, with age-related hearing loss, you're missing the clarity of speech. So in background noise, you can hear the volume because background noise, the hubbub, as I call it, of other diners is normally and that masks the softer parts of speech that gives the clarity, which is why anyone over the age of about 40 or 50, we start to lose that ability to hear, speech in background noise. Even without a hearing loss, we start to lose the ability to kind of filter it out per se. So, yeah, that's why it's more common as we get more mature, but it does affect people of all ages.
And what do people tell you about, their joy in the experience or their willingness to engage in that experience if they are unable to hear conversations very well?
So a lot of people just will say they avoid it. It's just too hard, it's too stressful, they mishear, they feel silly, and there's only so long you can pay attention in that environment before your brain just tunes out because it's just so tired. So either people just nod politely and pretend they can hear, but they're not actually engaged in the conversation, or they're what we call straining to hear. They're concentrating so hard trying to put the pieces of the missing puzzle together so they can understand the conversation. But it is absolutely exhausting to do for the brain. It's like running a marathon. So an event that they were looking forward to all week, they leave, tired with a headache. It can become a very negative experience.
And then what sort of impact would that have on someone's broader life or, their family relationships, how their life proceeds more generally?
Yeah, it can. So there is a lot of evidence about how hearing loss can cause social isolation. These situations can be so challenging for people, they just start to avoid them. We encourage our patients to find a quieter eatery and to be assertive and say, no, I have a hearing loss. I'm going to this place because it's where I can hear. But, people are shy. They may not have the confidence to dictate where everyone's going to go to accommodate for their needs. We do encourage people to find a quieter eatery and assert themselves. But sometimes rather than do that, they just withdraw completely or make an excuse not to go, which is very sad because how good is dining out with friends and enjoying, delicious food and fun conversation and that banter around the table? It is so good for the body and the soul.
And when people, you say, "I'll choose a quieter restaurant," or encourage people to find a restaurant that suits them, their auditory needs more, like what is it that they might be looking for? Are there visual signs of a quieter restaurant, or is it something you need to go into with an instrument that measures decibels? Like, how do you work that out?
Because beauty is, as I say, hearing is in the ear of the beholder kind of thing. We all have a different, what we call a speech in noise, perception, how well we can understand speech in background noise. So it's very individual, but generally, I've actually did a blog on this, 30 ways to find a quieter eatery. So ideally, soft furnishings, carpet, curtains, acoustic panels, a non-open kitchen, because they can make a bit of banging. You can't pick how loud the music is going to be until you walk in. And of course, you can use the ambient menu if it's been reviewed, of course, but there are other ways you can find a quieter eatery. I sometimes look at their social media and I look at the images of who they're targeting, because if there's a lot of if there's a lot of images of young people kind of, partying and have a good time, that kind of gives an indication that they're targeting that younger demographic and they may turn the music up to cater to that lively vibe. So I have a look at their social media because that will give you a good picture of their ideal customer, their ideal audience, because they want to attract that. So if you see people in their social media, relaxing, dining, talking around the table, that's also a good indicator that they cater for ambience and conversation as well. Restaurant reviews, that's a big one. So I'm also an occupational noise assessor, but that's something I do with the Ambient Menu, where I assess a restaurant to see if they're conversation friendly or not. But yeah, not everyone walks around with a sound level meter.
No, but perhaps we should, and perhaps I should as a restaurant critic, because as I said, it's certainly something that people ask me about, and sometimes, I go to a restaurant and it's a place that looks like it would be loud, but then it isn't, and you look around and you think, oh yeah, there are acoustic panels, or there's padding on the underside of the table, perhaps there are some carpeted areas, other soft furnishings that absorb the noise, and you think, okay, well, this is something that's been thought about. But other times, a restaurant, perhaps, I don't know, the volume obviously can change during the course of the evening as the room fills up. Perhaps the music gets louder. I suppose these aren't static environments, are they?
Yeah, you can never pick it. And even if a place has been acoustically treated, one large group, one loud person in that group can boost the noise level for the rest of the restaurant. It's called the cocktail party effect. When there's speech and you hear the speech, you naturally raise your voice to be heard over that other group. So one loud group will completely boost the volume in the restaurant as everyone's trying to talk over each other. So yeah, so you can never pick it, but that's one thing I do with the Ambient Menu. I also speak to the owners and I say, or the staff there, and say, when are your quieter times? So we post them on the website as part of our earbud reviews. That's what, we call ourselves some different, the members of the team that have some extra insights. So, for example, a local pub might be quiet during the week, but then they'll have a steak night or a quiz night, and that will just really boost the noise levels because they're more busy and they might cater to that vibe on those particular nights. So they're the kind of things you can't really pick from looking at a picture either. So that's the insights that we get from the staff, and they help us to guide people to the right place at the right time.
You mentioned you do an occupational noise assessment, and one bit of, I suppose, something I hadn't really considered that much was the impact that ongoing noise has on the staff in a restaurant. I reviewed a restaurant in Melbourne recently called Sincero, which was remarkable for its acoustics, and I learned words like I learned what coffered meant in terms of a ceiling, and Pascal Gomez-McNabb, the designer, explained to me how when a ceiling is coffered and you've got acoustic panels in there, then they further attenuate the noise. I also learned what attenuate means properly, which is to, I guess, reduce the noise impact. But as I was reading further into it, I found a study that talked about waiters in noisy restaurants have sore backs because they're always bending down to hear the diners or to be heard. I suppose there are some unexpected impacts of noisy restaurants.
Absolutely. So for the staff that are in there, especially if it's, the music is quite loud, they can, and in the kitchens themselves, they can be quite noisy as well. So you can get noise-induced hearing loss if you don't protect your hearing, if you are exposed to those environments. Some restaurants do actually exceed the level where it's actually what we call safe listening. So it becomes a long-term issue for people. They could end up with hearing loss, tinnitus, all the things that are associated with damaging your hearing.
But it's also those physical impacts that I hadn't considered, that you get a sore back, and there are probably other, I guess, skeletal impacts that there might be from the way that you try to reduce or just cope with the situation.
Absolutely. I hadn't actually thought of that myself, from the waiters leaning over, straining to hear. But we do know that once the background noise gets to a level of about 70 decibels or louder, the sympathetic nervous system kicks in. So we get a dump of adrenaline. So we get increased heart rate, increased breathing, the blood pressure goes up. if you equate that to a positive experience, you think of that as like lively vibes. But if it's a negative experience, you also get a dump of cortisol as well, the stress hormone, and that can lead to headaches. It can lead to a poorer digestive system. So there are physical ramifications of being in noise, even if it's not at a damaging level, just from that sympathetic nervous system kicking in and the cortisol and the stress response. So waiters would be, exposed to that for their full shift, which can be a very long time doing split shifts. So they would be getting a lot of musculoskeletal stress as well as that kind of stressful adrenaline response as well for their full shift, which would not be pleasant long term.
I mean, it's interesting, we sort of, lively is a positive word. It has, joyful connotations, but there must be this tipping point where, at least for some people, lively turns into stressful or difficult to cope with. When in your work, like, how do you sort of balance those ideas where, perhaps there is the desire for some, atmosphere, but you don't want it to be such that you can't enjoy a conversation?
Absolutely. So, yeah, like I said, it's about 70 decibels. I wrote a blog on it, like, when does lively become loud? It is very individual when someone perceives it to be a negative experience. But, so we have restaurant education packages where we kind of encourage them, we give them tips, and we say, you can get a little sound level meter on your phone, which is, generally okay for this kind of experiment, where you can just test what the noise level is in your restaurant to make sure it's conducive for conversation. You don't want it to be so quiet that people feel the need to whisper like they're in a library or something. Hushed tones are one thing, private conversation, but if you feel like you're in an echo chamber, if you say anything, everyone can hear you. You want there to be a gentle lull of background noise, but not to the point that you're raising your voice to be heard.
And do you see that this could be a positive for restaurants, businesses, in terms of being able to attract customers?
Absolutely. So the restaurants that have been accredited have seen an uptick in diner numbers. Last month, we had 10,000 people searching for a quieter restaurant. So the need is definitely there. So the accredited restaurants are ones that I have done a occupational noise assessment on and determined that they meet our hearing friendly or conversation friendly criteria for 80% of peak dining times. They've done our education package, so they know where to sit people that might mention the ambient menu, which means they would be sound sensitive, whether it be hearing loss or neurodiversity or any condition that can make you more sound sensitive. So they'll, know where to sit you. So the restaurants that have been accredited have seen a, boost in numbers. And other restaurants we speak to that are what I say loud and proud, if they're purposely making themselves lively because that's their target market, they've done their market research, they're doing it for a reason to attract a particular audience, they don't want people coming in and saying, oh, can you turn the music down? I can't hear, because it's not their target market, and then people will leave disappointed and then they'll leave a negative review. Noise complaints are the second, I believe, you could probably correct me on this if I'm wrong, number 2 complaint in the restaurant industry is noise complaints. So it is something that people are noticing and mentioning. But at the same time, if a restaurant has done a lot of research and they've got their target market and their niche down pat, they might be less inclined to turn the music down to cater for one group, especially on a Friday or Saturday night. So we're educating the community on which places cater to your listening needs, and the restaurants that want to be a part of that, can do our education package. And the ones that are more lively, they're quite happy for us to list them as lively because people know, I want a relaxed conversation, I'm on date night, business meeting, I want to catch up with someone who has hearing loss. They'll know not to go there because it won't meet their needs, and they can find somewhere else that will.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's not necessarily negative per se. It's just, is it going to suit you or not? So, Laura, I know you've started in South Australia. I've seen that there's a review of somewhere in Queensland on the Ambient Menu. But tell us, if we want to find the right restaurant for our particular needs, or if we want to add a review, what do we do?
Well, we're live in South Australia, Queensland, and shortly Victoria. We hope to be there by the end of November. If you go to the Ambient Menu, you can scroll down and there'll be a box that says how to leave a review, and you can leave a review through that. We really rely on diner reviews, so please leave a review if you go out, regardless of noise level. I still try to make contact with places because even if it's lively on a Friday or Saturday night, they might have a quieter night on a Wednesday or Thursday. So we do work with the restaurants to find out if they do have those quieter periods so people can find them at the right time. So yeah, it's kind of, we're working with the restaurant industry. We're getting their input as well as diner reviews, so we can, boost numbers at the right time for that place, and it's a win-win situation.
Yeah, love it. It's great. I think it's so important for people to consider. We want to increase social contact, not leave people at risk of social isolation simply by going out to dine, which should be a fun, beautiful, connecting experience. Thanks for making it easier for all segments of the community, Laura.
Thank you. Thanks for having me on the show. Really appreciated chatting with you.
Yeah, I really appreciate your expertise, and definitely everybody check out the Ambient Menu. Thanks, Laura.
Thanks, Dani.
This is Dirty Linen, and I'm Dani Valent. We air the issues that the hospitality industry finds hard to talk about, hearing from different people with unique perspectives. We want to hear from you as well. If you have something that needs to be said about a topic, get in touch so we can include your perspective. Contact us at dirtylinenat.deepintheweeds.com.au or hit us up on Insta at Dirty Linen Podcast. We can't wait to hear from you.
This